Agua Viva Fighting for a Future. 20 years ago, Agua Viva, a small village in the north of Spain, was dying. Young people wanted more opportunities, so they moved away to the cities. By 1991, there were only 618 people left, and most of them were old. Many of the houses were empty and falling down, and the local school had very few children. Agua Viva's future looked dark. In 2000, the mayor Luis Bricio decided something had to change. He wondered, how can I bring this place back to life? He knew the village needed people, but from where? Then he had a brilliant idea. He flew 6,300 miles to Buenos Aires and started telling everyone about Agua Viva. He spoke on the radio and put advertisements in newspapers. The ad said, if you are married with two children under the age of 12, we'll offer you a home, a job, free health care, and education for at least 5 years. The following year, he did the same thing in Romania. Many families accepted the offer, and Agua Viva began to change. The village school went from having 37 students to more than 80 in 3 years. The sound of children shouting and playing has made the local people feel so much younger. The economy began to improve too. There was work for builders repairing the old houses, and a factory making electrical parts for cars opened. Of course, not everything was easy. The people from Buenos Aires were used to a big city, so living in a small village with little public transportation was difficult at first. The Romanians had to learn a new language, and they all missed their family and friends back home. But everybody had new opportunities too. Before, many of the parents had worried about finding a job and having enough money to look after their children. After moving to Spain, their future looked brighter. Many of them thought, we're going to stay here for many years. This place will be our home. Global Work Solutions. At GW Solutions, we recognize the importance of cross cultural training for U.S. employees working abroad. Lack of cultural understanding results in lost contracts and less business. Here are some examples of what our courses can teach you. In the USA, we say that time is money. For American workers, punctuality and timetables are always important. At work, people concentrate on the task they're doing. They usually do not spend a lot of time on small talk. However, it's important to realize that not all cultures see time in this way. In many African countries, for example, getting work done isn't the only valuable use of time. Spending time at work to build close relationships with colleagues is equally important. It's important to ask about your colleague's personal life. Understanding these cultural differences is essential for working in a global team. If an American doesn't realize this, he or she might think that an African colleague who spends a lot of time chatting with coworkers is being lazy or avoiding doing his or her work. And an African worker might think their American colleague is the rudest person they've ever met. In the USA, written agreements are essential. Business deals are always agreed through a contract, and once it has been signed, we consider it to be final. The conditions of the agreement don't usually change without the signing of another contract. But you may do business in places where this is not the case. In China, for example, people generally place more trust in a person's word than in a signed contract. Once a good relationship exists, a simple handshake might be enough to reach a business deal. In the USA, workers generally speak directly and they openly disagree with colleagues. This kind of straight talk is seen as a mark of honesty. But where we see honesty, others may see rudeness. In some parts of Asia, open disagreement with colleagues may not be acceptable because it makes people feel embarrassed. Instead, you should stop and think for a while. Afterward, you could say, I agree in general, but could a different idea work in this situation? And your body language is important too. In the West, direct eye contact is good because it's a sign of honesty. In some Asian cultures, it's polite to avoid looking directly at your colleagues in order to show respect. Did you learn something new? Need to know more? Sign up for one of our training courses and learn how to do business wherever you go. Sulip International Museum of Toilets, New Delhi, India. Ever wondered about the history of toilets? Probably not, but visit the fascinating Sulip Museum and see just how interesting they can be. Admire nearly 300 different toilets dating back to 2500 BCE. Some are beautifully decorated, one is made of solid gold, and there is an electric toilet that works without water. The star of the collection is a copy of a 16th century toilet. It was used by King Louis XIV of France, sometimes while speaking to his government. See drawings, photographs, and poems about toilets too. One photo shows a toilet that was used by an elephant. Underwater Museum, Cancun, Mexico. Join one of our unique tours and discover an amazing underwater world 27 feet below the sea. Designed by Jason DeCare Taylor in 2009, it has over 450 sculptures. They are made from natural materials and show art and nature existing side by side. The silent evolution shows men, women, and children standing together on the seabed. They look so real that you want to talk to them. There are also sculptures of a house and a life size beetle car. The sculptures are covered in beautiful corals, and their appearances are constantly changing. Watch as an incredible variety of fish swim in and out of them. Micro Miniature Museum, Kiev, Ukraine. Small really is beautiful in the Museum of Art with a difference. The exhibits created by artist Nikolai Sajisti are so tiny they can only be seen clearly with a microscope. Read the world's smallest book. It is only zero point 0.6 millimeters in size but contains 12 pages of poems and drawings. There is a chess set on the head of a pin and the world's smallest electric motor. It is 20 times smaller than a piece of sand. Look closely at the eye of a needle and discover the 7 camels inside. Read the words "Long Live Peace," not on paper, but written on a human hair. Breaking down the sound of silence. 10 years before he died, the composer Beethoven went deaf. He called this disability his nightmare. Fortunately for thousands of classical musical fans, he didn't stop writing brilliant music. 180 years later, being deaf hasn't stopped 3 Americans, Steve Longo, Ed Chevy, and Bob Hilterman, from playing music either. In their case, the music is rock and their band is called Beethoven's Nightmare. The three boys grew up in different cities, but they all showed a surprising interest in music. Although they couldn't hear it, they were amazed by the energy of 1960s bands like the Beatles. They could see the effect the music had on the audiences, the happy faces of friends and family as they watched. Something exciting was obviously happening. "I'm going to do that too," they all said. "Why? You can't hear?" asked parents, teachers, and friends alike. Each boy used sign language to answer, "Because I can feel it." Longo and Chevy started playing the guitar. They put on headphones and turned up the volume. With the help of powerful hearing aids, they could get some of the notes. The rest they felt through vibrations. Drummer Hilterman came from a musical family. His parents thought that teaching their son to play an instrument was a waste of time. But they changed their minds after he nearly drove them crazy by using knives and forks to drum on the furniture of the house. The three men first met in college in Washington, D.C. They started a band and played many concerts until they graduated in 1975. In 2001, Hilterman had the idea to bring his old friends together again. They have been performing ever since. In 2013, a new member, Paul Rotze, joined the band as a singer. At concerts, dancers put on a spectacular show and use sign language to explain the words of the songs to the audience. And of course, the band plays very loudly. The group has encouraged many deaf people and people with other disabilities to follow their dreams. Chevy says, the only thing deaf people can do is hear. The real art of acting. Acting can bring fame, money, and success, but it's not always easy. Good acting is not only about learning lines and dressing up, it's also about convincing the audience that you really are somebody else. To achieve this, good actors sometimes put themselves through unpleasant experiences. Actors often have to lose or gain a lot of weight in order to play a part. In The Machinist, Christian Bale plays an extremely thin factory worker who suffers from insomnia. 4 months before he began filming, Bale started a crazy diet. He only ate an apple and a can of tuna a day and lost 63 pounds. Although he wanted to lose another 20 pounds, the producers persuaded him to stop because they were worried about his health. When filming ended, he had just 6 months to gain the incredible 100 pounds he needed to play Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins. Physical training can also be a challenge. Steven Spielberg wanted to show the real horror of war in Saving Private Ryan, and he wanted his actors to feel like real soldiers. So he sent a group of them, including Tom Hanks, to a 10-day military boot camp. They ran miles every day, slept outside in the freezing cold, and were given little food. In the end, all of them were physically and mentally exhausted. Natalie Portman also had to make a great physical effort when she got the role of ballerina in Black Swan. Before filming, she spent a whole year training for 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, in order to learn to dance. Once filming began, things didn't get easier either. Portman dislocated a rib while dancing. Nevertheless, she bravely continued filming during the 6 weeks it took her to recover. Sometimes becoming a character can mean saying goodbye to the real world and everybody in it completely. Actor Heath Ledger locked himself in a hotel room for 6 weeks when he was preparing to play the role of Joker in The Dark Knight. He slept only 2 hours a day and he spent the rest of the time practicing how to walk, talk, and move like his character. It seems he was successful in the end, as audiences and critiques loved his work and he won an Oscar for the part. Understanding idioms. Idioms can be a problem for language learners. They often seem to make absolutely no sense at all. For example, imagine your English friend Sam tells you his math exam was a piece of cake. Do you imagine him at school, sitting in front of a sweet dessert with nothing but a pen to eat it with? In fact, he's saying that the exam was really easy. It's important to learn useful English idioms, and knowing their origins helps us to remember them. Here are stories of 3 English idioms. If you ask a friend to hang out, you might hear, "Sorry, I can't tonight. I'm feeling a little under the weather." It may sound like rain is coming, but really, it means that your friend feels sick. This expression came from sailors who often got seasick when bad weather tossed the ship from side to side. The sailors went down to the bottom part of the ship, away from the storm and where the ship's rocking was gentler. If you have a difficult roommate, you might say, "My roommate has loud parties every night, but last night was the last straw. They played music till 5 a.m. I'm moving out." A last straw is a final problem that makes someone take action. This expression is a short form of the phrase, "the straw that broke the camel's back." The idea is that even though a single piece of straw is very light, many pieces added together will be too heavy for the camel to carry. Have you ever asked someone if they know something and they reply, "That rings a bell"? They're not hearing music. They mean that what you're saying sounds familiar and they think they've heard it before. The idiom comes from the fact that bells are used to remind people of many things. Traditionally, bells would toll for an important event like a wedding. School bells tell you that class is starting, and even the alarm chime on your phone reminds you that it's time to get up. Jack, London. I'm overweight and I'd really like to slim down. I've tried all kinds of diets, but none of them seem to work. And there's so much advice on the internet. I don't know what to believe anymore. What would you recommend? I had the same problem until I tried a high protein, no carbohydrate diet. It was very strict. In the first couple of weeks, you have to eat less than 40 grams of carbohydrates a day. So no bread, pasta, or potatoes. But I lost 9 pounds in just 13 days. So for me, it was worth it. I had a lot of meat and eggs and some butter too, which was great. I'd give it a shot if I were you. Sarah, Edinburgh. Maya, San Francisco. I'm traveling to Rio de Janeiro next month and I'd like to see as much of the city as possible. The problem is that I'm only going to be there for a couple of days and I'm not sure how to fit everything in. Should I book an organized tour? I was in Rio a couple of months ago. I travel a lot and like to be independent, so I chose to find my own way around the city. What a mistake! Rio's so big that I kept getting lost. And in the end, I didn't get to see the beach of Ipanema or the cathedral. It had been nice to have somebody to talk to also. I really should have gone on a guided tour. Dag, Oslo. Andreas, Bogota. I've just finished my degree and I'm on the fence about what to do next. Here in Bogota, there aren't many job possibilities right now. Should I go back to college to get a master's? Or go stay with my cousin in New York and try to get a job there? My English is not very good, by the way. A friend wrote this. Stay where you are. I moved to the United States from Poland and I got a job as a server, but it's long hours and not much money. I haven't really made many friends and I miss home. I should have stayed there and continued with my studies. Marta, Krakow. A good excuse for a day off work. On average, US employees take 4.96 days per year. Usually, this does not cause any particular problems. But when employees take sick leave without a good reason, it can quickly become an issue. In fact, in one survey, 18% of employers said that they had fired an employee for taking days off without a good reason. The key is to understand what reasons are acceptable and what reasons are not. Generally, most excuses for sick days fall into one of three categories. The most common reasons for not going to work are health related. It would probably be okay to tell your boss that you ate something bad last night and that you have a stomach ache. Of course, you might not want to share the details of a health issue with your boss. After all, you do have the right to privacy. If you don't want to be too specific, you can just tell your boss that you have a small medical issue and need to take the day off. Household accidents are the second category of reasons for not going into work. You might call your boss to say you slipped in the shower and hurt your knee. This is a common accident and one that your boss will sympathize with. However, if you're going to be out of work for several days due to an injury, it's important to make arrangements with your employer. See if you can work from home or at least make sure there is someone to cover your work. The third type of sick day use isn't really about illness, but it's about something else you can't control: transportation problems. The car might not start, there may be a terrible traffic jam, or there could be delays on the subway. Some employers may be sympathetic to absences due to transportation problems, but others may not. It's important to know your boss and to understand whether he or she will accept an excuse like this. Regardless of the reason for the sick day, there are a few things you can do to make missing work more acceptable to your employer. Try to keep sick days to a minimum. When you do need to take a sick day, give your employer as much advance notice as possible. Finally, never take a sick day if there isn't anything wrong with you. The only good excuses are the ones that are true.